Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. In this lesson, we will be analyzing the poem Request to a Year by Judith Wright. Okay, now let us begin with the first stanza. If the ear is meditating a suitable gift, I should like it to be the attitude of my great great grandmother, legendary devotee of the arts. Now, the speaker personifies the ear, saying that it might be thinking about a suitable or appropriate gift for the speaker. And if the ear happens to be searching for a gift, the speaker would like it to be the attitude of her great great grandmother. The speaker doesn't really expect the ear magically to grant her great great grandmother's attitude because the ear isn't capable of doing anything of that sort. Instead, the speaker seems to be thinking about what she wants to get out of the ear to come. It isn't clear yet what the nature of the great great grandmother's attitude was, even though the speaker does mention that she was a legendary devotee of the arts. This might suggest that the speaker's great great grandmother's dedication to art is the main thing that she admires about her. And notice the abundance of consonants, of T consonants over here throughout the stanza. And what does it do? It adds a subtle musicality to the poem. Let us notice the words meditating, suitable, gift, all the T sounds in it, attitude, great great grandmother, the T sounds in it, and then the devotee of the arts. So the crispiness of these T sounds, they encourage the reader to really pay attention to each and every word present over here. Let us move on to the second stanza. Who have 8 children and little opportunity of painting pictures, sat one day on a high rock beside a river in Switzerland. So the speaker's great great grandmother didn't have much time to pursue her love of art because it is very obvious she had 8 children. Now again notice the use of alliteration and consonants over here. Little opportunity of painting pictures. Opportunity, per sound coming in the mid of the word suggesting its consonants, and the same sound coming in the beginning of the words, again alliteration. These per sounds, I've always told you that these per sounds are actually known as plosive sounds. They're known to be harsh sounds. Okay, strong rather than harsh, I would say they are strong sounds. Okay, now which seem to have meaning into it, which seem to be very clear. Okay, so therefore these per sounds, they add music and emphasis to the line, calling the reader's attention to the great great grandmother's passion of art. She had little opportunity for painting pictures, and this line is filled with consonants and alliteration. It is actually highlighting the great great grandmother's passion for art. One day, the speaker over here continues that her great great grandmother sat atop a high rock beside a river in Switzerland. Now notice how the great great grandmother has separated herself from the word below. The fact that the speaker mentions this scene right after talking about the burden of motherhood suggests that the great great grandmother has, in a way, kept herself on the top of this rock in order to have some space and peace for the work of art, rather to work on her art. Okay, so she went on to the vantage point, leaving everything else behind. Okay, so that she can get some peace, some space, so that she can work on her art. We can see enjambment in the lines 7 and 8. High rock and Switzerland. Okay, these enjambments, they create a sense of momentum. Sat one day on a high rock beside a river in Switzerland. Even though the reader doesn't yet know where this story is going, this enjambment builds anticipation because it doesn't have any barriers over here, any pauses over here. So it is going to move on, go ahead into the next stanza. So this enjambment is building some sort of anticipation that what is going to happen next. Now let us move on to the third stanza. And from a difficult distance viewed her son, her second son, balanced on a small ice floe, drift down the current toward a waterfall that struck rock bottom 80 feet below. Now the significance of the high rock the great great grandmother was sitting on becomes clear in the third stanza. She was sitting from a difficult distance. So, this from a difficult distance, the speaker is saying that her grandmother, from this difficult distance, the speaker is suggesting that her grandmother saw her second son, okay, now who balanced on a small ice floe and then being swept down the river towards an 80-foot waterfall. Now, in other words, the great grandmother's son was in danger and danger for life, and she was too far away to do anything about it. So, this scene actually reflects the conflict between motherhood and art, which was mentioned in the previous stanza. The great great grandmother, she kind of presumably climbed on top of this rock to paint for the work of art, to work on her art. Okay, so and still the this focus on her heart and on her art has actually separated her from her child who was in danger, who was in her need actually. Okay, so this child is at a distance from her, and the child is in need, the child is in danger, but the because she is at a different position, therefore, and why has she gone on to that towards that position to have some solitary moment, some alone time, so that she can have the space to work upon her art. Now, this stanza you can see is filled with a lot of alliteration, and this alliteration it adds drama to this stanza. We can see difficult distance, the alliteration, the drift down, drift down, and then rock bottom below, burr sound. Okay, and then there is sibilance over here as well. Okay, for example, in distance and second, sun, balanced on a small ice floe, all of these are sir sounds, and there is sibilance over here. So there is alliteration plus there is sibilance. So there is intensity of sounds in this stanza, lot of sounds, lot of same sound, lot of repetition of the sounds. So this intense sounds of this stanza, they signal that something major is happening. And then there is enjambment as well. Okay, enjambment, it in a way it rushes the poem ahead, and it is reflecting the way the boy is being swept towards certain that small ice floe drift down the current toward a waterfall that struck rock bottom. So there is no pause over here. It is resembling waterfall. It is resembling drifting down without any pause. Let us move on to the next stanza. While her second daughter impeded, no doubt by the petticoats of the day, stretched out a last hope alpenstock, which luckily later caught him on his way. So the great great grandmother was too far away to help her son, but thankfully she wasn't the only person seeing this happen. Her second daughter was also there, and what did she do? She stretched out a last hope alpenstock, yani कि a hiking staff, for her brother to grab on. The speaker notes that this wasn't easy for the daughter to do. Why? Because she was impeded. There were many barriers. She was hindered. Okay, now she was stopped by the petticoats of the day, by the dresses of the day. So, in other words, she would have found it very difficult to move quickly. And what was the reason? The reason was actually the voluminous undergarments the girl was expected to wear in that time. Okay, so she was barred actually, she was hurdled, she was hindered actually because of her voluminous undergarments. Okay, and we can listen to the seizure and end stops over here. While her second daughter impeded, a seizure and then end stop, both coming together. No doubt, again, the seizure by the petticoats of the days, end stop. All these pauses together, they create a halting, a stop in the rhythm. And what does it do? That stoppage in the rhythm, it evokes the difficulty the daughter was facing when she was trying to save her brother. So her garments, which were actually only required for one gender, that is the woman, they are just one type of obstacle she had to overcome in order to reach her brother. And then you can also notice how the first four stanzas of the poem, They are in fact all a single sentence. They are all single sentence. And what is happening? They are stopping over, they are completing over here. They're all a single sentence. And the end of this sentence finally comes with the period at the end of line 16. Okay, and this finally reveals that the boy survives this terrifying incident in a way that the hiking stick his sister stretched out and luckily later caught him on his way. So the boy's rescue actually is mentioned in these brackets, in this parenthesis. So what does it suggest? What does it suggest? The question is, why is only this line in the bracket? Because the speaker, the writer over here, the poet wants to suggest that the survival of this boy isn't really the focus of the poem. Okay, and what is the parenthesis doing? It is weakening the climatic moment. Okay, now this is the climax of the poem, and it is weakening this climax of the poem. What is it doing by this? By weakening the climax of the poem, it is suggesting that the poem is not actually after the story of this son. Okay, na? And the main purpose, what the story is after in this poem, actually hasn't been revealed yet. So if it is in the bracket, it is suggesting that it is not as important as what is about to come. With this, we're going to move on to the next stanza. Nothing it was evident could be done, and with the artist's isolating eye, my great great grandmother hastily sketched the scene. The sketch survives to prove the story by. The revelation that the boy survived has taken some of tension and stress out of the tale. The speaker wants readers to focus on her ancestor's action without worrying about what happened to the boy. He's not the subject of the story the speaker wants to tell. Now, having assured the readers that the boy would be fine, the speaker backtracks to consider what her great great grandmother did during this intense incident. She says that it was apparent that her great great grandmother could do nothing to help her son. She was simply too far away, and any attempts she made at heroic act to save her child would have all gone in vain. So, what did the great great grandmother do? Rather than despairing or screaming pointlessly for help, the great great grandmother had the presence of mind to try to capture the details of what was happening. And in order of doing this, what did she do? She created a record of what was happening to her son when she could not do anything. Therefore, the only thing she could do was to create a record of what was happening to her son. So she had the isolating eye of the artist, okay, meaning that her great great grandmother was able to cut through the noise and focus on what mattered. Okay, therefore she hastily, quickly sketched the scene, and that drawing now survives to prove the story by. So, in other words, the sketch still exists and it offers proof that this story really happened. Now, listen to the sound devices in these lines. And with the and my great great grandmother hastily sketched the scene, the sibilance over here. The sketch survives to prove the story by again sibilance S. Okay, so this sibilance and the consonants of artist within the word artist, the consonants, both of these together, the sibilance and the consonants, they emphasize what is the moral of this story, of this poem. The poem isn't just preserving the speaker's family story, it is making an argument about the role of art and the role of the artist. The artist is meant to pay attention to what is going on around them and preserve these events in art. So, if the great great grandmother had been standing close enough to the river to actually help her son, there is no doubt that she would have acted as her daughter did rather than sketching the scene. Art was never going to save the boy. The question is, the statement is, the idea over here is that because she was at a distance, therefore art was never going to save the boy, but it could do one thing and the only thing, and that is to tell the story of the rescue or the story of the demise of her child, of her boy. So the poem actually doesn't suggest that art is meant to be a substitute for action. Rather, it is suggesting that it is something people may turn to when they have nothing else to do. And the last two verses, year, if you have no Mother's Day present planned, reach back and bring me the firmness of her hand. So the poem's final stanza is a couplet rather than quatrain. All the rest of the stanzas of the poem, they were in 4 lines, they were quatrain. This is a couplet. So this change in the form makes for a tidy ending, the rhyme, and they are rhyming as well, and they are close to being iambic as well. Okay, so the conclusion of the poem is in the form of a couplet, and that too rhyming couplet, and that too rhythmic couplet, as if it is summarizing the poem's central purpose. What is the poem's central purpose? The speaker says, here, if you have no Mother's Day present planned, reach back and bring me the firmness of her hand. Just as at the beginning of the poem, the speaker is personifying the year, she is now addressing it directly. Okay, which is also known as apostrophe when you're addressing something directly in the poem. This allows the speaker to frame her great great grandmother's story in a way that centers her hopes and desires for the year. So the poem began with personifying the year, and it ended with addressing the year. All what has happened in the middle, in the center, is the story of the great great grandmother. So this story of the great great grandmother is suggesting the hopes and the desires of this speaker for the future. So she is hoping that over the course of the year to come, she will become a stronger and more effective artist, like her brave ancestor, like her brave great great grandmother, who created something which was so lasting in the face of nearly losing her son. Even though she was about to lose her son, still she has created something, a piece of art that has had a lasting effect. Now, the fact that the speaker is reflecting on this desire for Mother's Day, it is happening on the Mother's Day, and this desire is for the Mother's Day. It suggests that she is thinking about her role as a mother in addition to her role as an artist. So her great great grandmother is depicting what happened to her son, wasn't just making art. Her great great grandmother, when she is depicting what actually happened to her son, in doing so, she wasn't just making art. She was also preserving family memory. So the speaker is now continuing her great great grandmother's story. So that memory of the family still survives, and the story continues. So all of this suggests that in addition to wanting to be a better artist, the speaker is also thinking about the ways that mothers and women, they more generally often bear the weight of preserving family memory as well. They have numerous responsibilities. And you can find alliteration over here. Present planned per alliteration, back and bring again per alliteration, and then there is end rhyme as well, planned and hand. Both these alliteration and the end rhyme, they make this final stanza musical and memorable. The reader is meant to come away with not only an impression of the great great grandmother's artistic ability, but also with some ideas about the ways in which the role of artist in a way overlaps with the roles which are often fulfilled by mothers and women. Therefore, this after at the end of this poem, it brings us to the basic themes of the poem, which are the role of the artist in difficult times and the motherhood and female strength. So, what is the role of the artist in difficult times? The speaker knows the story about her great great grandmother and her sir. Why? Only because her great great grandmother had the firmness of hand to commit it to a piece of paper. And the poem makes a case for the value of art in difficult times. So even though it may sometimes seem as if artists do nothing useful, The art they create, they serve an essential purpose. It survives. The art which they create survives to prove the story by helping the people to remember and understand events, even if they can't always change those events or alter those events. There is an old saying that artists must turn their back on the world. So, only in order to create a piece of art. Here, the artist is basically turning her back on her own motherly instincts in order to do the only thing she can do in her position. And what is that? That is bearing witness to what is happening. So, the survival of this powerful drawing suggests that preserving life's events, no matter how tragic, is actually central to the artist's mission. Artists may not be able to alter events, but they can depict them, they can preserve them, and they can prevent them from being forgotten. Some people might be disturbed by the great great grandmother's choice to draw what she was seeing, wondering how a mother could remain so calm when her child is in danger. But the speaker admires her ancestors' resolve and essentially asks the universe to grant her the same steadiness and control her great great grandmother exhibited under the most trying of circumstances. This brings us to the second theme, which is motherhood and female strength. This poem, Request to a Year, it praises the strength of women who manage to create and preserve their legacies despite these obstacles. The poem begins by acknowledging that motherhood and art can come into conflict. And the speaker says that because her great great grandmother had 8 children, she had little opportunity for painting pictures. So, in other words, the expectations of motherhood meant she did not have much time or energy to pursue her art. That the speaker is longing for her ancestors' firmness of hand as a Mother's Day gift, it might imply that she too is struggling to balance the demands of motherhood with making art. The speaker celebrates her great great grandmother for having the strength to create art under such difficult circumstances. The speaker also implicitly praises the quick thinking of her ancestor's daughter, who, despite being impeded by the restrictive women's garments of the day, managed to save her brother's life. So, this daughter too had to overcome gender based restrictions, which is represented by those petticoats, in order to save her family. So, poem actually honors multiple generations of women for their strength. The great great grandmother, her daughter, and the speaker herself, who upholds her ancestors' legacy by writing this poem. With this, we're going to come to the form and the meter and the rhyme scheme of this poem. Form. As far as form is concerned, the Request to a Year, it consists of 6 stanzas, and the first 5 of these stanzas are quatrains, while the last stanza is a rhyming couplet. The quatrains, they, in a very subtle manner, they require they recall, they make the readers think about the ballad form, and the ballads were traditionally used to tell a story, and this poem is also actually telling us a story. And the couplet at the end of the poem, meanwhile, almost feels like the final verse in a sonnet. The clear rhyme makes the poem's ending feel more dramatic and conclusive as well. This brings us to the meter. The meter of the poem. The poem doesn't use a regular meter, and its language feels casual and conversational, which in turn makes the speaker's story feel more reflective and intimate. Because this poem is actually telling us a story, so the meter of the poem is also like a story. Okay, it doesn't have a proper rhyme scheme, it doesn't have a proper meter as well. And after saying that, we let me say that there still are a few lines which have rhythm, even though as a whole the poem doesn't have any meter, but there are a few lines which are close to becoming iambic pentameter. Okay, so the fact that the poem inserts some metered lines into its free verse, it perhaps echoes the struggle of great great grandmother and artists like her, who must juggle art with the chaotic demands of motherhood. Two opposing things coming together. So, how the role of the mother is and the artist. Uh, how do they have to juggle between art and then the demands of the motherhood? This brings us to the final thing, the rhyme scheme. The poem doesn't use a fixed rhyme scheme. In fact, in the first two stanzas, there aren't any rhymes at all. The poem feels almost like a prose, which suits is its storytelling style. And in the third and the fourth and the fifth stanzas, however, the poem slips into an ABCB pattern because the third and the fourth and the fifth stanzas, they have uh, two rhymes only, flow and below over here, day and way, and I and by. Okay, so the pattern would be not AB but AB and CB. Okay, I hope you've understood this. So all these rhymes, they add some music and intensity to the story of the speaker, making it all the more memorable for the reader. Finally, the poem's concluding couplet, it rhymes perfectly with plan and hand. This makes the poem ending sound like the final verse of a sonnet. What does it do? It wraps things up on a firmly conclusive note. With this, we're going to end the analysis of this poem. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. Jazakallah.